All right, hello everyone and welcome back. Happy Friday and our final private pilot class. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. I know there's going to be a few more people filtering in, so if you have any questions, now is the time before we start in just a couple more minutes. Please make sure that your first name and your last name, and if you have a middle name, or preferably just match it to your whatever government issued ID you have. So if you don't have a middle name, don't put one. If it's just an initial, just follow exactly as it is shown on your government issued ID. We will go over exactly how to get your FAA test endorsements, what's the process, how to take the final exam, how to sign up for FAA WINGS credits, and so forth. So welcome back, everyone. Hello, hello. What's up, Cody? How's everyone doing out there today? Match whatever is on your driver's license. So just make sure that they all are going to be equal at the end of the day. If you have an endorsement that doesn't necessarily match your government issued ID, the testing center could potentially turn you away from taking the official test. So happy Friday, everyone. Hello, Carmen, Maddie, welcome. Sorry about that, Dennis. Yeah, it's on your account section, so you can log into your Checkride Prep account, and I think it's in the accounts section. We can confirm that with Travis, and you can basically update your first name, last name. Some people use nicknames, or some people don't put their real names, so just make sure it matches. Don't worry about the checks, Aiden. That's a great question. So a lot of people come back and email us and say, hey, I don't have a green check next to everything. That has no bearing on your completion rate or anything else. It just means that you probably didn't click on a document or something like that. And anytime that we actually update content, then it removes some of the green check marks, or it won't actually, that section that was complete originally will probably not be complete because we're kind of ever changing things, okay? And Travis, it's got to be middle name as well. Testing has class started. Not yet, Annette. In a minute, we'll get started here. You can take the test as many times as you want until you pass. We were requesting an 80% or higher in order to get the endorsement. Remember, the FAA only requires a 70% on the, okay? If you have a middle name, it needs to be spelled out just as it's shown on a passport or whatever government issued ID you have, okay? Don't put, if your middle name is Jacob, don't put J as the initial. Make sure it's spelled out. Any other questions before we actually begin here? I think you click on the 3 dots to change your name in Webinar Jam to the right of your name, or there's a settings button. John, we will double check that for you. And I'll show you how to fill out the Google form. There is a Google form that takes care of all this stuff as well. You don't need to get WINGS credits to take the test. You have the ability to get FAA WINGS credits though. So, all right, let's go ahead and start. It's about 5 minutes past the hour, and let's go ahead and take a look and see what's on the agenda for the final class. So welcome everyone, happy Friday. And like I said, this is the 12th and final class after week 4. So we've got our truly committed folks in class today, so welcome. And let's go ahead and take a look and see what we're doing. As always, we'll talk about our final course updates, the Saturday class, which has actually been pushed to Sunday now. We'll talk specifically more about how to get your FAA WINGS credits and also your test endorsement. Then we're going to go into our final little bit of content, which includes aeromedical factors. These are all different medical conditions that are really kind of relevant in terms of aviation or aerospace medicine, if you will. Then we're going to talk about ADM, which is aeronautical decision making. We'll talk about different types of hazardous attitudes that we want to be able to identify, and then ways of kind of mitigating or reducing that risk. Then we'll also get into what is known as CRM, which is crew resource management, and then our PAVE checklist at the end of the day. The PAVE checklist, though, like I said, this is going to be an abbreviated class. It's not going to be as long as any of the others. And we will actually be meeting on Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And that's going to be the final Q&A for this class. And then we'll also go over the PAVE checklist for anybody that's interested. And it's 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Sam. So I have a slide for that here coming up. Anyways, the final section, as mentioned here, is going to be Sunday at 3 p.m. If you have any more questions or need help studying over the weekend, or if there's test questions that you're just kind of not getting, we'll be talking a little bit about aircraft performance and flight planning. In addition to that, we will also be covering the PAVE checklist, which is pilot, passenger, aircraft, environment, and external factors. So that is really there that we developed that program so that way it can get you through the oral fairly efficiently. And we basically normally do that tonight, but we're going to push that till Sunday. And no Saturday. There's a competing class, unfortunately, John. So Sunday at 3 p.m. we will record it if you cannot make it, though. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. I took away our current class because this is our last class. So if you guys are still interested or you want some company on your Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights, everyone here is more than welcome to join us for our free online instrument class. We're going to take about a week off, try to get things up to date, and then we'll move forward. It's going to be not this Monday, but the following Monday, which is October 26th. And that is for the Instrument Pilot Ground School. That will run for 4 weeks, the same schedule that you guys and gals have been used to. And it will conclude the week before Thanksgiving on November 20th. All right. The Certified Flight Instructor Ground School, that is on November and December of 2020. And we'll release some more class information for the rest of the year. And then we're pretty soon we'll look at our 2021 calendar coming up as well for planning purposes. Okay. So welcome, everybody. For those that some of you may be in the education program as well, I'll throw that out there. If you have or know someone, or maybe yourself, if you're in middle school or high school or anyone under the age of 21, what ends up happening is that we are starting our education program. It's 33 weeks. It's about an hour and a half every Saturday night at 4 p.m. Pacific time. It's basically tailored to basically work with the academic school year. In addition to that, it is really geared towards teens and then their parents or leadership. If you do belong to EAA or Civil Air Patrol or any other of those groups, we are starting tomorrow as well. All right, if you guys have been enjoying this class, and hopefully you guys have, feel free to please leave us either a Facebook review or one on Google. I think we're like 3 away from 50 on Google. So it does mean a lot to us. It lets future students know what's going on. It also let us know that you guys have enjoyed these classes. We do read them. We do take feedback and so forth. And I'll share this feedback form with you in a little bit, where there's another way that you can also help us in terms of the way we structure the classes, the way we tailor the classes. It's kind of like a course evaluation, if you will, for us above and beyond the Facebook reviews. But we'll go ahead and put that in the sticky message as well. So that will be there for you. Okay. All right. T-shirts. Once again, T-shirts are in stock. The original COVID T-shirts are still available, and the Sunset T-shirts are also still available, except for medium and black. But we did order more of those. The female T-shirts were ordered, so we'll have those on the website here shortly. But the pricing is still the same. The COVID shirts, the original blacks were $20. The camo was $25. And that basically said, I survived COVID-19 with Checkride Prep. And then the colorized shirts, or what I call the sunset shirts, are $25. Doesn't really matter. The camo shirts are more of like a polyester material. And then the black shirts are like a soft cotton blend. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this. This is the 2-minute public service announcement as per usual. So everything in this course is free. The last day that this course material will be available is going to be on Wednesday, October 21st. That's going to be just in a couple days from now. And that will be at 12 noon Pacific time. Okay, so 12 noon Pacific time, we will go ahead and basically close out the course. And in addition to that, the reason why we do that is just to basically prevent procrastination, give people the opportunity to really stick with the course, finish it out. And that's the reason why, as we've said before, we have such a high completion rate. As Mike was alluding to, he was asking about this coupon, the discount coupons for the T-shirt. There are other ways if you want access longer. This is going to be our last class that we do lifetime access for, so keep that in mind. And these will be available to you until that date on the 21st, so Wednesday the 21st at 12 noon. Then we're actually going to stop the lifetime access that you see here. But you have 2 different plans. First one is really for private pilots. So if you like the private pilot ground school, you'll get this class. In addition, you'll get the professionally filmed version, which is instead of 12 lessons, we break it down even more to about 52 different lessons. the private pilot oral prep, which is really helping people get ready for their oral, which is kind of working towards your check ride once you're done with everything. You'll get the PDF guide for the pilot, 20% off the coupon, as Mike said, and I will check with Travis, but I believe it automatically was sent to you, Mike, but we will double check that here. Travis, if you can just make sure that Mike gets his, Hebert gets his discount code. In addition to that, all of our lifetime courses, as it states, lifetime basically means that as we update the courses, you'll have access to all the updates and the future things. We're also kind of working on the private pilot course first. We're adding in all the flight maneuvers and those types of things, which will be up in the next 30 to 60 days. You do get the 24/7 instructor support and then the FAA WINGS credit at any time. There's no rush for it. We did do the first 100 students will also receive a 1-hour one-on-one ground lesson with a CFI. That is now down to, if I can do it as cleanly as possible, probably not. That's down to 13 students. So there's 13 more spots left that will receive the 1-hour one-on-one. So that's one opportunity. It doesn't matter. You'll receive it no matter what, whether you pay the full rate or if you're doing 3 monthly payments. And we'll put that in the sticky message as well. Rebecca can throw that up there. All right, and then the last one here is basically everything remains the same, except we're basically giving you access to pretty much all of our courses minus the CFI program. So it does include the instrument ground school, which is coming up, and we're actually in the process of refilming that here in the 4th quarter. We also have, if you're interested in drones or at least flying them commercially, we have our SUAV, which is Small Unmanned Aerial Vehicle. Part 107, if anybody kind of, I think we've seen a couple of questions. What is Part 107? Part 107 is just all of the FARs, the Federal Aviation Regulations that pertain to the remote pilot license or drones. So that's all that means. The 4-flight course, which once again is being going to be refilmed, and someone asked the other day when the next 4-flight course is. I believe we're going to put it after Thanksgiving, before Christmas, kind of smushed in there in December, but I still need to look at the calendar there. We are redoing that because, as you guys know, technology kind of moves and it's kind of an ever-changing thing. So we're going to go ahead and get that updated. The commercial ground school is also available, and then everything else remains the same. And then it's still the same deal, the first 100 students. So as I mentioned before, we're now down to 13 spots. So you're more than welcome to join us on that. And like I said, Rebecca will put a link at the very, very top of the sticky message. In addition to that, she will also put a link to our YouTube page. If you want to follow us on YouTube, please feel free to do so. Like I said, once we get 1,000 followers, we can kind of stop using this platform. We can actually start broadcasting live and doing our classes, which makes things a little bit more accessible for everybody. So we will go ahead and do that. All right, a couple fun numbers. There's just a couple admin stuff that we want to go here, basically get through tonight. Joe, if you want to upgrade, you can just send us an email. All right, so that's it. That's my public service announcement, everybody. I appreciate your patience. Wasn't too painful, hopefully. But a couple of numbers I want to run through. So as mentioned before, we always do this for every class. Our highest attendance live webinar for our intro class, it's always our intro class, was a little bit less. So it was about 1,100 students, 1,172. I think our highest number ever for a private pilot class was over 3,000. Total students enrolled in the private pilot ground school. So this is including your group and pretty much everybody else. It's about 6,400 currently. And then this class alone has basically watched about 324,468 minutes of video. So that's a lot of time sitting in webinars and reviewing all these videos and so forth. So we do appreciate it. In addition to that, and I can't really take credit for it, I forgot to scratch out the name here, but we did respond to just a little less than 2,000 emails of your emails, questions, comments, concerns, how to sign up, password changes. That's actually Rebecca, so thank you so much, Rebecca, for that. And that's just been in the last 30 days as well. In addition to that, we also have, I think we reached 5,000 members in our Facebook group, which is awesome. So take advantage of that group as well. And then this group collectively, just for the private pilot program, you guys have taken over 3,800 quizzes, okay? And you guys like to reset your password, although not as much as other classes. 2,800 password resets. I think the the biggest password reset I've ever had is 14,087 password resets, and that was from one of our private pilot classes over the summer. We had a couple thousand people. I think we had almost 3,000 people in that class. So obviously those numbers get higher. Keep in mind, a lot of people say, well, there's only a couple hundred people on right now. There are a lot of people that take this class in the off hours, and they basically watch the replays, and they don't necessarily attend every single live class, okay? So we just want to recognize it and thank everybody out there for it. So the other thing I want to do is I do want to give a huge shout out to all of our moderators. They really make this possible, and we have a great team out there. In most of our classes, we're getting somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 comments, and even in some of our largest classes, we get somewhere upwards of 8,000 comments in every single class, okay? So as we look at it, though, we've got Rebecca out there. She's always on. Mr. Travis, Mr. IT man, Crystal, Cody, thank you so much from the local area by where we are. Tom, Zaf, and then, of course, last but not least, I will give our super moderator, Missy. Everybody knows Missy. So thank you so much, Missy. She has been with us basically since the beginning of all of this back in March. When we started doing online things, I'll hide my little profile picture so we can get a look at Missy here. But she's our little shining knightless, if you will, and really volunteered her time. She does this completely for free. And she's working full-time and everything else, so we really appreciate having her here, answering all of your questions, keeping up with everything, helping moderate the Facebook group as well. So thank you to all the moderators out there. There's so much going on with all these classes, so it does help us out, especially myself as the instructor. Just because of the fact that there's just so many comments. Sometimes you guys throw comments in the thing and it will fly by on my screen. But thank you so much, everybody. All right, couple things we want to talk about before we get into the endorsements. It's going to be study tips. Study tips are very, very important. So once again, these are just reminders, but this course was designed to teach you above and beyond the required information for the test. I wanted to put together a program that basically not only teaches the test, but also makes a safer pilot at the end of the day. And what we're looking for when we mean that is basically proficiency and consistency, meaning you can operate safely and you can do it basically consistently. It's not just a one-time event. So remember that you do not need to know every single thing in this course. What I would recommend is take the practice test. We have 600 or 700 questions in the FAA testing database for this course. We've uploaded them for you. We spent time making sure they are correct and making sure the testing figures are aligned with those questions. So please make sure you utilize that resource, okay? Take advantage of them. Continue taking your practice tests. If you identify a question and you don't understand how you got there or why that is the answer at the end of the day, send us an email. We are here, okay? So feel free to send us an email. Usually what I'll do is I'll do like a little quick 30 or 60-second video sometimes and explain it, because that's sometimes faster than typing out paragraphs. But that's the reason why we're basically offering this to you, okay? So we are kind of your best resource. Use us and have us at your disposal. If you're not, I know a lot of people don't like Facebook, but if you are on Facebook, feel free to join the Facebook group. Like I said, we're actually at 5,000 people now. And if you need a quick answer, there are 5,000 people willing to help you. And it's great to kind of see the camaraderie and everybody's working together, as mentioned before. So you can usually get a quick answer there, usually in about 10 or 15 minutes as well. Also, remember the FAA testing supplement, the one that you downloaded, the one that you've been using for this course. It is your friend, meaning that you can use it to study. The first 20 pages are going to be different types of legends for your chart supplement information, and also the aviation sectional charts. You can use that on your test. In addition to that, also for studying purposes, remember, when you're looking at all those METARs and your TAFs and your forecasts and your pilot reports, take a look inside the book, because that's 99% of the questions they're going to ask, okay? So if you have the ability to review those and run through them, that is really the key. Now, this information on the left-hand side, this comes directly from the ACS. This is the Airman Certification Standards. Those airman certification standards, as mentioned before, right here, these are all the different private pilot type quizzes, or I'm sorry, actual official FAA written tests. The one that this class is designed for is known as the PAR test. That's Papa Alpha Romeo. That's known as private pilot airplane. So when you go in to take the actual test, you'll have 60 questions. You need to be at least 15 years of age or older to sit for the test. You get 2.5 hours, and you need a passing score of 70%. In addition, people ask all the time, what are those 60 questions? Well, as you can see here at the very, very bottom, these are all of the different categories or areas, and it tells you the percentage of the questions. The largest percent of the questions are 5 to 15%, which is basically safe and efficient operations. But a lot of things we've already covered: weight and balance, density, altitude performance, aerodynamics, power plants, aircraft systems, aeronautical decision making. We're doing that tonight. Pre-flight actions, performance, aircraft accident reporting, regulations, all of these different types of things. Okay. Those 600 or 700 questions, Anthony, are all the ones that you have been doing in our online course. All right. So as I mentioned, you don't need to know everything. This material is foundational, and that was the goal of creating the course overall. All right, let's talk about how we sign up for the FAA written test. There's one company here in the United States. It's called PSI Exams. You can write down this website at the top of the screen. It's also in the lesson as well, faa.psiexams.com. When you go there, it will basically have you create a new account. If you do not already have an existing account, go ahead and follow that link, follow the instructions, set it up. That's how you can find a local testing center near your house. You can usually search by zip code, and then what ends up happening is they'll give you the hours and basically allow you to book everything online for you. When it asks you what test you want to take, just make sure that you're using the correct testing code. So for those of you taking the private pilot airplane test, that is the PAR. That's going to be the most common type. For those that are taking the sport pilot test, you can always email us or find it online as well. Okay. So that's how we sign up for the FAA written test. That's the official written test. It usually is about $100 to sign up. It's $100 basically every single time you take the exam. You want to score as high as possible the first time, and keep in mind, once you take the written exam, your results with the FAA are valid for 24 calendar months. After 24 calendar months, they expire, and then you have to re-sit for that FAA written exam. All right, let's talk about what we bring to the FAA testing center. Some of this should be kind of common sense, hopefully. First thing is what is known as the acceptable form of identification. So that is that box on the left there. Everybody here needs to have at least the following. So we'll start over here. You need to have some type of identification that's valid and current, and it must include the following: a photo, a date of birth, signature, physical, and/or residential address. In addition to that, if you are a U.S. citizen or a resident alien, that's the center column here, that could be the identification card issued by a U.S. state, territory, or government, such as a driver's license, or a passport, or an alien residency card. For those that are not U.S. citizens, there are special requirements. You can still take the test, the FAA test that is. So that would be in this far column here. You need at least whatever nationality passport you hold, and at least a driver's permit or license issued by a U.S. state or territory, or an identification card issued by any government entity. Does not matter with that. In addition to that, you also want to make sure that you, continuing on the list here on the right, make sure that you bring your logbook endorsement to the FAA test. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but what ends up happening is once everything's done, we go ahead and email you the FAA written test endorsement, okay? The aviation plotter, so the aviation plotter and either a manual or a digital E6B calculator, go ahead and bring those as well. Everything else will be provided. They will provide you paper, pencils. They'll also basically provide you the testing supplement and overlays so that way you can do it. In addition to that, you can use other additional test aids such as scales, straight edges, protractors, plotters, navigational computers, log sheets, all models of aviation-oriented calculating devices that are directly related to tests. In addition, you may use any test materials provided with the test, so that's that testing supplement. At the end of the day, it's the test proctor who makes the final determination related to the testing materials and what personal possessions, if any, that they allow into the testing center. Most of the testing centers have video cameras in them. I think all of them do, or at least are monitored in real time. In addition to that, most of the time what ends up happening is your cell phone, keys, all that stuff is left in a locked drawer on the outside. You can use the ASA CX3 flight computer. All right, what not to bring to the FAA testing center, hopefully this is self-explanatory. Cell phones, personal notes, testing supplements, they'll provide paper, the pencils, the overlay, and those types of things as well, okay? Uno más, uno más, uno más. Friday Night Blues, I know. Is this any better? Uno, dos, tres. Repeat last 2 minutes. Huh. Just reconnect. It'll work, everybody. All right, perfect. So for those of you that can't hear me, just make sure that, love the twos. For those of you that cannot hear me, just make sure that you reconnect, just like everybody else. For those that missed what I said, basically what not to bring to the FAA testing center, obviously things that give you an unfair advantage, such as a cell phone, personal notes, testing supplements, recording devices. The FAA takes all cheating very, very seriously, and that's a very quick way to disqualify yourself. In addition to that, the testing center will provide the FAA written testing supplement, blank paper, and pencils as well, okay? Last thing I'll also mention, in case anybody needs it, I always throw this in there. If you are potentially qualified, potentially for dyslexic applicants, you can get test aids and additional either time or materials. The way that you do that is you want to request it from the Flight Standards District Office. You can also check the circular, which is AC60-11 Charlie, and they will ask you, they will basically provide you or request whatever information they need in order to make that, okay? The light sport pilot for Byron out there, you have the ability to test for that as well. We just need to know for the written test. We'll go through that here in the next slide. All right, so what everybody else has been basically working on and wanting to know is how do you actually get your written test endorsement? So remember, in order to qualify for the FAA written test endorsement from us, we require that you watch all 12 lessons. That does not mean that you have to watch them live. You can watch a combination of live or a combination of the live and recorded versions, or all recorded versions, does not matter. In addition to that, you have to take the final exam with an 80% or higher. Every time you take the final exam, the questions will reshuffle. You get 60 questions over 2.5 hours. So if you don't score the score that you want, you can continue retaking the exam, although you just need to get the 80%. Keep in mind, if you do have the lifetime access or anything like that, you're not restricted to this upcoming Wednesday to get all this stuff done. But what you want to do is make sure you select class number 12, which is our final class. Scroll down beneath the placeholder video that's currently there to the class topics. You're going to see a couple different options there. The first one will be request FAA written test endorsement. In addition to that, there's going to be one that says request the FAA wings credits, and then the last one is a course evaluation. Let's talk about the written test one. You'll open this form up. This is a Google form. Please fill out the form and make sure that the information is correct, meaning that your first name, middle name, and last name match your government issued ID. And basically allow us 5 to 7 business days to get you your FAA written test endorsement via email. You'll get a completion certificate from us, and you'll get the official test endorsement as well that I have to sign. Usually we're doing it even sooner than that. I think we've gotten that down to 24 or 48 hours, but I just like to throw a buffer in there. The written test endorsement, Peter, is valid indefinitely. There is no expiration date on it. All the classes, Luis, do not need to be checked. You just need to meet those 2 requirements as discussed. And this is for both the course certificate and the FAA written endorsement. We send them at the exact same time. and the certificate is good indefinitely. Okay. All right. The other one I'll point out is the FAA WINGS program. So remember, the FAA WINGS program is a safety-related program. We actually have a FAA WINGS specialist in-house. That's Missy, our moderator. She can answer any questions that are associated with it. But basically, the WINGS program, if you participate in it, it's one way of, at a minimum, it makes you a safer pilot. At a maximum, it basically gets you out of a flight review every 24 calendar months. Okay, so the way that it works is there's a combination of different courses that you can take, whether they're in person or live courses or recorded courses, webinars, and then there's also some flight things that you can do. But if you want the FAA WINGS credits, just make sure you have an account. It's faasafety.gov is where you can sign up for that account. Just provide us thanks, Robert. Provide us the information on whatever the email is that you signed up with, and then fill out that Google form, and then just give us a couple days. We'll get it uploaded, and you'll get the course credit for the WINGS program. Next to each one of those documents, there is a third Google form. I would really appreciate it if you could fill it out. It's the course evaluation. It's very, very simple. It lets me know how I'm doing and the pace that we're going and all the information, what we can do better. Every time that we look at it, we basically try to, improve the course for the next class. And it improves the tests, the quality, and it lets us know what is going well. And it also helps us. We look at the criticism and see how we can kind of make the course better overall. So it does help us. It's we don't take anything personally here, so we're always looking to improve. Okay, so let me just see. If you're a lifetime member, you can retake the course as many times as you want for WINGS credits when you want to. You can also request WINGS credits at the same time, Austin. Don't worry, Pauline, if the course little green buttons, the check marks, don't need to be checked for every single class. We actually can see when you log in and when you log out and what you've watched and what you haven't watched, okay? The WINGS credits, in order to biannual flight review, or what we call a flight review, Missy can probably answer that better than I can. I do not know off the top of my head. Thanks, Penny. Penny also said WINGS can also save you money on your insurance as well. That's absolutely right. And that's it. That is really the admin stuff that we needed to cover before we get into tonight's topics. So thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate the time and everything else. So let's go ahead and dig into tonight's material. And like I said, we're going to talk about aeromedical factors first, which is going to be different types of things that really concern the body. And these factors are really going to become important, especially as you move into your instrument phase of training when you start flying in the clouds, because we don't necessarily want to rely on our body to tell us what the airplane is doing or not doing. Okay. All right. So aeromedical factors, this is going to be the last couple lessons. There's not too much. We've got about 20 slides, 25 slides tonight. So you guys can relax and then call it a night a little bit early, which is nice, and we'll answer any questions at the end. All right, so aeromedical factors are factors that concern the body with various external conditions and forces imposed upon it. Now, the list is extensive, so we're only going to cover the stuff you need to know for the purposes of the private pilot, but if you are interested in medical type things, there are a lot more than what we're going to be discussing tonight. The main thing here is we want to tell you, obviously, what those factors are, what the main ones are, how to identify those factors so that you can have or develop a working knowledge of how your body is affected, and then some of the symptoms of whatever they may be, and then what are the possible treatments as well, okay? Last couple of questions before we go. The light sport test, just put it in the comments if you need it on the actual Google Doc. The oral prep is going to be covered on Sunday, Igor. Thank you very much, Missy, for the WINGS credit stuff there. And you have the potential of getting a first-class medical with asthma written, depending on what medication you're in. If you have questions, you can talk directly with an AME. All right, so let's talk about the first one for aeromedical factors. We're going to talk initially about hypoxia. We'll talk about the symptoms, the treatments, the different types of hypoxia. For those that don't know, there are several different types. Then we'll get into carbon monoxide poisoning. We'll get into hyperventilation. and then we'll get into spatial disorientation. And once again, we're just covering a few topics in spatial disorientation. There are a lot of things that can disorient you at the end of the day. So different types of hypoxia that we are going to be talking about is hypoxic hypoxia, hypemic hypoxia, stagnant hypoxia, and histotoxic hypoxia, okay? So hypoxic hypoxia, we also call this altitude hypoxia, is really just a lack of oxygen absorbed by the body due to atmospheric conditions. So remember, as we increase in altitude, the oxygen content does not decrease, but the partial pressure decreases. So what we mean by that is the concentration of the oxygen is 21% in the atmosphere, and it remains like that from the ground to outer space, but the pressure or the partial pressure is reduced by 50% once we get to 18,000 feet. So that is what we mean by partial pressure is the Earth's atmospheric pressure. By 34,000 feet, that pressure is reduced by 75%. Okay, so that air that's normally forced into your lungs with that pressure, that's really what's really kind of going to mess you up in a way. And we'll talk about the symptoms here in a minute. But as you can see on the right-hand side, you have an altitude and a time of useful consciousness chart. And remember, there are FAR legal minimum requirements, right? There are oxygen requirements that we did talk about, 12,500, talked about 14,000 and 15,000. So if you start flying in the flight levels, which are anything above 18,000 feet, you will start to kind of learn a little bit more about this stuff. So if you're flying at 45,000 feet and you have a event that depressurizes the cabin, you may only have 9 to 16 seconds, 15 seconds of useful consciousness. That's the reason why they require quick donning masks and other types of materials, okay? If you're down at 20,000 feet MSL, they're giving you about 30 minutes or more. If you guys want to watch a few different ATC calls, there's been plenty of folks who end up with hypoxia. And there's been some crazy stories where controllers are actually walking them down or talking them down to get to lower altitudes where they can kind of snap out of it as well. In addition to that, Elizabeth said, great point, Elizabeth. The FAA has a chamber. It's basically a pressure chamber, if you will. So I don't know if it's open. It's probably not open during COVID, but you can actually test this, and they basically raise the altitude. They have you do puzzles. And it can basically see how it affects you as you're flying along. Now, this event usually will happen due to what we know as faulty equipment, malfunctions, or improper use. So if you have a pressurization system, maybe you're using it incorrectly, maybe you have a bad door seal, that's usually going to be the most common thing. Or it could even be that you don't know how to operate the brand new oxygen tank and you didn't necessarily turn it on full blast, okay? The hypemic hypoxia occurs when the blood is not able or to carry a sufficient amount of oxygen to the body's cells. This is caused primarily by anemia, disease, blood loss, deformed blood cells, or carbon monoxide poisoning. It also occurs with smokers more frequently as well. Remember that with CO poisoning, the CO attaches to the actual hemoglobin about 200 times more easily than oxygen. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the near future. And anytime that you have CO poisoning, remember that you may start feeling better, but the effects may take up to 24 hours to recover. It takes a long time to kind of get back to normal in those circumstances. This can occur anytime that you donate blood, and also, and if you donate blood, it's going to result in what we call a higher physiological altitude. So the effects will basically hit you more rapidly than others. Okay, so anytime you donate blood, they're usually giving you a warning anyways not to necessarily fly or operate machinery or something along those lines. There's that generic warning. Stagnant hypoxia is an oxygen deficiency in the body due to poor circulation of the blood. It can also happen due to pulling excessive G's, or if it's cold out. Remember, those cold temperatures restrict blood to your extremities. It's basically preserved for the core. And also it may cause hyperventilation. The last one here is known as histotoxic hypoxia, and this is the inability for the body to use the oxygen Most of the time, it's caused by alcohol, other drugs such as narcotics and/or poisons. Okay, so those are all the different types of hypoxia. Next thing we want to talk about is what are the symptoms and treatment of hypoxia. So the biggest symptoms that you're going to have, at least the initial ones that you're going to be able to see, are cyanosis, which is going to be blue fingernails and lips. It's usually we're going to see a hypoxia first. You'll also get tingling in the fingernails and toes, your extremities. Some people will also get headache. And then as the conditions basically worsen, you'll go to numbness. And then what will end up happening is you'll go to the increased response time, the impaired judgment, drowsiness, the things that we really don't want, to the point of euphoria, limp muscles. So the treatment is very simple. The treatment is basically get to a lower altitude. They want you at 10,000 feet or below. In addition to that, try to slow your breathing rate by counting to 4 or 5 breaths. And if you're using supplemental oxygen and you're all of a sudden having these issues, you want to check your connections and your equipment and make sure that something didn't, become unattached. Make sure that the cylinder is actually still full or has some type of oxygen in it. And then also make sure that it's in the emergency position. So you're getting 100% of that, what we call ABO, which is aviator breathing oxygen, and not just the diluted version. You don't want the diluter, okay? All right, the next thing we're going to cover is that carbon monoxide poisoning. Remember, we talked a little bit about this before. The symptoms are as shown here: headaches, nausea, dizziness, breathlessness, leading to collapse and potentially loss of consciousness. That's obviously what we don't want. In addition to that, it can be vomiting. You might have a drunk appearance, being definitely confused, unable to think clear. Some people get incontinence if it's pretty bad. So the treatment is going to be fairly simple. You always want to identify any possible sources and then try to isolate them. At the end of the day, our #1 source for carbon monoxide poisoning is going to be from the use of the heater. Okay, so that would be the first thing that I would shut off. I would also open up all the air vents, try to flush the cabin with fresh air. But remember, once you have CO poisoning, it's going to stick with you for a very, very long time. As I said, up to 24 hours. So it's important that you get on the ground and get treatment if you need to. After you remove the actual CO source, only about 0.5% is removed from the blood every 4 hours. Okay. If you have supplemental oxygen, go ahead and use it. Open up the windows, circulate the fresh air, turn off that heater. Let ATC know what's going on. You also want to, if you have maybe like a pulse ox, you can use that to check your own respiratory condition. But even if you suspect it, let ATC know. Give them the heads up of what's going on. Just because you tell them that you suspect it does not mean you're declaring an emergency. But if you feel that the situation warrants it, by all means, declare the emergency. It's safer to do so, even if you get safely on the ground, and land as soon as possible. Okay, land as soon as possible. Even though you flush out the cabin and you turn off that heater, these are still going to be issues that are going to linger for the next, roughly 24 hours. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our first FAA test question here. So this is dealing with our carbon monoxide. Let me go ahead and open up the poll here. Large accumulations of carbon monoxide in the human body result in what? Is it A, tightness across the forehead, B, loss of muscular power, or C, an increased sense of well-being? Give you guys just a couple more minutes on that. last stragglers. You guys are a split class, so I'm gonna go ahead and end it right here. Get about 56% of the class with the correct answer. So keep in mind, large accumulations of carbon monoxide in the human body result in a loss of muscular power. So keep that in mind. The exact wording is loss of muscular power, vomiting, convulsions, and coma. That's pretty much the very end of it at that point. Okay. A is incorrect because hypoxia actually gives you an increased sense of well-being and stress. It could actually result in tightness across the forehead. And then for those that said C is actually incorrect because hypoxia gives you an increased sense of well-being. So those are really dealing with hypoxia, A and C. The only one that's dealing with carbon monoxide is going to be B in this circumstance, all right? Good job, everybody. Let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to look at hyperventilation. All right, so with hyperventilation, and keep in mind, all of the treatments that we're giving you are FAA recommended. I know we've had medical doctors on, and most people will not tell you to do certain things, but we're just going exactly with what the book says. There are probably better medical treatments than what we're going to tell you for some of this stuff, like the Valsalva maneuver, which is basically plug and blow, plug your nose and blow if you have potentially a sinus block. All right, so hyperventilation is just an abnormal increase in the volume of air breathed in and out of the lungs. And what this does is it will significantly decreases carbon dioxide, so CO2 content in the blood. Now, even if this goes untreated, the body will actually naturally recover from the situation and slow its own breathing. Even if the person passed out, the body is just going to kind of do a self-recovery. But at the end of the day, this whole situation will subside usually within a few minutes once you get the rate and depth of the breathing under control, and most people can do this consciously. So when we do this, the reason why we tell people to either try to talk loudly or control their breathing in and out, the paper bag is not actually doing anything. It's just getting them to focus on their breathing rate. That's really the goal. In addition to that, the recovery will take a few minutes, but the biggest thing you want to do is try to remove whatever caused that situation if you can. Stress, panic, anxiety, if you're able to do so, okay? This is not necessarily an emergency at this point, right? Don't let it turn into emergency. As a pilot, it can be very, very distracting. But remember, aviate, navigate, communicate, try to get it under control, but fly and control that airplane at the end of the day, okay? If the source is obviously an emergency, so I don't know, engine fire, engine failure, something like that, then deal with the emergency first, right? Take a moment, go through your emergency training. You'll learn those once you go to the airplane. They're usually going to be ABCs, which is your airspeed, best place to land. And then there's a few different C's behind there, which is cockpit flow, communicate, and also checklist if there's time. And that person is just going to have to deal with that hyperventilation, unfortunately, at that point. Okay. All right. The next thing we're going to talk about is spatial disorientation and illusions. We're only going to go over 2 of them tonight. There are roughly, I think, 16 or 17 that you would learn about if you become a CFI. We go through all of them, but these are the only ones that you guys need to know about for this purpose. So, spatial disorientation and illusions, these specifically refer to a lack of orientation with regard to position, attitude, and movement of the airplane in space. So there's 3 different systems that the body uses that work together to really kind of figure out how we're oriented and which way we are physically moving, okay? A lot of your CFIs, especially in primary training, when you get into your foggles, you need 3 hours of hood time or basically instrument time. A lot of times we'll tell you to stick your head down, close your eyes, and we'll manipulate the plane in a certain way, and we'll ask you, are we turning right, are we turning left, are we climbing, are we descending? And a lot of times your body will end up tricking you at the end of the day, and that's the reason why when you move into instrument training, we always say trust in the instruments. It's basically trust but verify, right? So part of instrument training is we learn to fully trust our instruments, but while we do so, we're basically cross-checking specific instruments with other instruments to make sure that nothing's broken and we can fully rely on those systems. So those three systems in our body are the vestibular system, the somatosensory system, and the visual system. So the vestibular system are just all the organs within the inner ear, and those are basically going to sense position by the way we are balanced. So if you have any inner ear problems, you shouldn't be flying. It's going to throw you off fairly quickly. Those somatosensory systems are really all of our nerves and our skin, muscles, joints. That also includes hearing, and they are going to be sensing the position based on gravity, feeling, and also sound. All right. The final system is visual, so obviously our eyes, and that's basically our position based on what is seen. But what we're going to be talking about in the next 2 slides are going to be different types of visual illusions in terms of how, by just looking outside, we can, try to orient ourselves with something, and it's not necessarily going to be straight and level flying. So the first one we're going to look at is known as false horizons. These are fairly common, whether you're flying at night or during the day. And what this is this could be potentially either a sloping cloud deck. So clouds are not necessarily exactly perfectly level. And sometimes what you'll have is you'll have a sloping cloud deck. And what pilots naturally do is we try to orient ourselves with that sloping cloud deck, and then we end up in a turn to the right or to the left. Okay. This also happens with roads. If you're flying along at night, especially in the desert, I know flying out to Vegas, back and forth between LA and Vegas, sometimes you start to see these long roads like the I-15, and you try to orient yourself with them, and then you realize that you're in a mild turn. Okay, so anything such as ground lights, stars, any type of geometric patterns of ground lights, they basically provide you inaccurate visual information, or what we call a false horizon. And effectively what we're trying to get you to do is rely on that attitude indicator, make sure you know what the aircraft is doing at all times. And this is an easy one that can kind of go by the wayside. At the end of the day, though, we're just trying to prevent what we call loss of control, okay? The next one that we have as well is going to be the autokinesis. So the autokinesis, if you were to stare, I don't know if anybody here remember those magic books? I think they were called Magic. You just stare at the puzzle like an inch from your face, and eventually you'll see something. It's kind of the same thing in a way, except it's just further off. If you stare at a stationary object at night, usually going to be a light or something like that, you stare at it for long enough, it will actually appear to move, even though that it is not moving. And what the pilots do is they then try to, once again, orient the aircraft. Magic eye, that's it, Mike. They try to orient the aircraft back to that light source, okay? So what will end up happening, and what we're trying to avoid to happen, is if you do this, you could potentially lose control of the aircraft. And once again, that is known as autokinesis, okay? Glad somebody knows magic eye out there. I remember that as a kid. All right, coping. How do we cope or deal with spatial disorientation? So once again, the main thing is going to be understanding what these illusions are and being constantly alert for them. As I mentioned, these are just 2 out of 16 potential illusions. There's other illusions as well. If you're trying to land on a wider runway than normal, it's going to feel higher. And that doesn't matter if you're during the day or at night. If you're landing on a smaller strip and happens to be very narrow, you're going to feel closer to the ground if it's a larger runway. If it's a smaller runway, you're going to feel higher up, even though that's not necessarily the case. So those are some other examples as well. There's also things such as pollution and haze that can kind of throw off your vision as well. So just understanding and remaining constantly alert for these, that's kind of the key here. And really understanding at least the basic instruments and how they work and utilizing them. There are other devices out there known as a Barney chair, a Vertigon, or what is known as a virtual reality spatial disorientation demonstrator. These are all different ways that you can safely experience spatial disorientation. The other things you also want to do is always obtain and understand pre-flight weather briefings before you fly in any type of marginal visibility, even if it's around that 3-mile mark, or any time that the visible horizon is not evident. And that could be flying in the desert at night or over open water at night. Make sure that you are up to date on even the most basic instrument training, or basically flying by reference to instruments. As private pilots, we don't get a lot of practice unless we do it. Don't fly, obviously, in adverse weather conditions, especially at dusk or darkness. Instrument flying, even if you do have an instrument rating, flying in the clouds at night is pretty rough. It takes a lot of mental fortitude and stamina to kind of keep that airplane straight and level for long, long periods of time, right? Ensure that whatever outside visual references you are using, that they're reliable and they happen to be fixed points on the Earth's surface. Do not try to orient yourself with a speedboat at night or anything else that happens to be moving. It's not going to end well for you. Avoid sudden head movements, especially during takeoff, turns, approaches to landing. Never, ever move your head suddenly right to left if you're in a turn. That's a very easy way to kind of get motion sickness as well. Dawn, exactly. Avoid IMC conditions. You should be IMC free as a private pilot. And then what we say is be physically turned on for the flight. Okay, so it doesn't really matter reduced visibility or not. Just make sure that before every flight, we'll talk about the I'm Safe acronym on Sunday, but make sure that you have proper rest, you have a good diet. There's nothing that is going to basically restrict your ability to operate that flight, whether it's illnesses, medications, alcohol, fatigue, sleep loss, anything along those lines that could potentially affect that actual flight or provide a negative outcome. And then the most important thing, obviously, is learn those flight instruments and how to use them. Trust in the instruments. Disregard those sensory perceptions. That's going to be the big thing as well, right? So that's how we deal with coping with spatial disorientation. The other one that I also wanted to throw out there as well is that any time that we are trying to get out using special VFR, remember that's 1 statute mile clear of clouds. If you're trying to get out and there's a cloud layer right around your airport, that is what we call scud running. If you're just kind of sitting a couple feet below those clouds trying to figure out a hole to get out of, that kind of falls in the line of scud running. And remember, scud running is really pushing the capabilities of yourself and the aircraft by trying to maintain that visual contact with the terrain, while also trying to avoid, contact with the terrain. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at 2 FAA test questions here, and then we'll take a quick break. First one is dealing with the carbon monoxide. So large accumulations, let me turn it on for you guys. Large accumulations of carbon monoxide in the human body result in what? Is it A, tightness across the forehead, B, loss of muscular power, or C, an increased sense of well-being? Ooh, you're right, guys. I don't know why that came up. Hold on. I like how people are answering it, though. I think I grabbed the wrong one, and I wasn't paying attention. I apologize. It should be this one. All right, let's try that again. A lack of orientation with regard to the position, attitude, or movement of the aircraft in space is defined as what? Spatial disorientation, hyperventilation, hypoxia. Sorry about that, everyone. Just on autopilot tonight. Something, Maddie, was indeed messed up there. Come on, big money, 100%, everybody. Exactly, it's Friday. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll right there, and probably one of our highest polls that I've seen. 99% correct answer, though, is gonna be spatial disorientation. It is basically what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. So good job, everybody. Let's see if we can keep it up. I briefly mentioned this. Let me make sure I grab the correct question here. So what is it often called when a pilot pushes his or her capabilities in the aircraft limits by trying to maintain visual contact with the terrain in low visibility and ceiling? Is it scud running, mindset, or peer pressure? Give you guys just another couple seconds. I still see a couple more people answering. All right, I'm gonna go end it right there. I talked a little bit about it, wasn't on the slide, but it's actually scud running. So scud running is, like I said, when we're really pushing our capabilities, the aircraft's capabilities, and we're basically trying to maintain visual contact with the terrain in low visibility and ceiling. That's not a position you basically want to put yourself in, okay? Scuds wasn't the missile, unfortunately, Jimmy. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and we are just gonna, because this is a shorter class today, we're just gonna do a 5-minute break. We're gonna come back, stretch your legs real quick. We're gonna talk a little bit about hazardous altitudes and aeronautical decision making. And then from there, we'll kind of talk a little bit about CRM and the next steps in terms of your flight training. And we'll do a little busy gym video here about what bad CRM looks like and personal minimums. And that is it, okay? So it is, let's see, 3 minutes past. Let's come back in 5 minutes. Let's come back at 6:08 or 8 minutes past the hour. All right, I'll see everybody in just a few. All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you guys had a good break out there. We're going to go ahead and continue and talk a little bit about general aviation accidents, ADM, hazardous attitudes. We'll look at a few test questions, and then we'll move on from there, okay? All right, so moving on, we're going to get into what is known as aeronautical decision-making, but I wanted to share this graphic with you from the FAA showing you where aviation accidents occur for at least GA aircraft, general aviation aircraft. And what we have as shown here is you have the highest percentages are really going to be takeoff, climb, and then coming in for landing, right? So that's what our primary critical phases of flight: taxi, takeoff, landing, and that's really where we have the heaviest workloads, communicating, shooting an approach or coming in to actually land, dealing with different traffic and those types of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few different things with aeronautical decision making, which is really kind of a safety related. It's really kind of safety related or kind of mitigating risk, if you will. Okay, so that's all we're going to basically be trying to do. And for the purposes of the private pilot, we're going to talk about some very low level topics. If you kind of go up the food chain to commercial pilot and beyond, especially ATP. For ATP training, we spend a whole week on this stuff. So they grill us with this stuff, and there's a lot more to it. Let's go ahead and take a look at what ADM is. So as stated before, ADM, or aeronautical decision making, is the systematic approach to the mental process. So that's the risk and stress management used by pilots to consistently determine the best course of action in response to a given set of circumstances. Now, while the ADM process is not going to eliminate the actual errors, it will actually help you, the pilot, to recognize those errors and be able to manage the errors and minimize the effects, because we don't want to end up in an incident or an accident at the end of the day. Okay. So what they do is we're going to talk specifically about personal attitudes, hazardous to safe flight. These are the hazardous attitudes that we're going to be looking at. There's 5 of them. In addition to that, ADM also includes learning behavior modification techniques. How do we recognize and cope with stress? Developing risk assessments, learning how to utilize all of our resources. So those are in flight, on the ground. Remember, even if we're flying by ourselves, we always have a controller as a resource. If you're flying with passengers, you have passengers, other pilots, those types of things are other resources, and how we can use that to basically have a safe outcome of a flight at the end of the day. So what we'll also be getting into is kind of the evaluation of your aeronautical decision-making skills, and we'll introduce what is known as personal minimums in a little bit here. It's always good to set personal minimums. We talked about what the legal minimums are, but if you're doing the legal minimum, that doesn't necessarily you're doing it probably the safest you're probably not the safest, you're definitely probably not the most proficient at what you're doing at that given point, okay? So, as stated, this is what we're trying to avoid, a gear up landing potentially. And there are hazardous attitudes that we can basically identify, and they are going to be anti-authority, impulsivity, invulnerability, macho or machoism, and resignation. So these are the 5 that we need to identify. And the reason why we're going to talk about it is that when pilots exhibit these types of hazardous attitudes or traits, they are actually, you're kind of blind to it yourself. So you may not actually recognize it in yourself, but if you have the ability to know what they are, it can actually prevent an accident such as this, okay? And keep in mind, it's not one thing that leads to an accident. It could be several things. There's usually a lot of different things that occur in order to get to this step here, okay? All right, so let's look at the first one. The first one is anti-authority. These are the people who say, don't tell me, okay? This is the attitude found in those that don't like them to be told what to do. These folks are resentful of having someone tell them what to do, regardless of the rules or regulations. They're going to say that procedures are silly or unnecessary. A lot of times procedures and regulations are there for a reason. And keep in mind, it's always your prerogative to question authority if you feel it's an error. ATC, they make human errors all the time as well. So if you don't think it's a valid command from ATC, don't follow it on blind faith. Make sure you question them, all right? So This is what we call anti-authority. These are the people that don't like the rules or the don't tell me's, all right? The next one that we have is impulsivity. Some people probably know this or know a coworker or something that does this. This is those that do it quickly. They do it quickly just to get something done. It may not be the right or best way of doing it, but this attitude is frequently for those that just need to act immediately. They do it out of impulse. They don't necessarily think about all the options, nor do they think about the associated consequences with them. Okay, so you might end up doing something, but it's not necessarily going to be the best option or provide you the best outcome at the end of the day. Okay, so that is the do it quickly impulsivity. Next one is invulnerability. It won't happen to me. So this population group tends to be a little bit older, and keep in mind that as we age, we basically bring in our own personal beliefs and biases of what we've learned throughout our lives. So, younger kids in their teens and 20s, they don't have as much experience. So, they don't necessarily have some of these common traits that we're looking at. But these folks it won't happen to me. And most of the time what we see is that a lot of times people see, they're not stupid. They know that accidents occur. But let's say I'm 50 years old and I've never been in an accident, an automobile accident, and nothing's happened to me, okay? Well, they feel that basically that it won't happen, and they know that accidents will happen, and they happen to everyone else except for them, right? They never really feel or believe that they will personally be personally involved in one. And then, like I said, experience is a huge contributing factor. As we age, we bring in those personal beliefs and our life events that basically give us an individual bias. And then also keep in mind, pilots who think this way are more likely to take chances and increase that risk exponentially, all right? Now, keep in mind as well that even though we're talking about 5, some people will have more than one of these that will apply. Macho or machoism, this is the I can do it attitude. So these are pilots who are always trying to prove or one up and make sure that people know that they're better. It's the I can do it, I'll show you, look what I can do types. Now keep in mind that this type of attitude, they're usually trying to prove themselves by taking additional risks in order to impress others. And while most people think this is a male attribute or characteristic, this also can occur equally in women as well, okay? So that's what we mean by macho or machoism. And the 5th and final one is known as resignation. Okay, so resignation is what is the use. So pilots feeling resignation do not see themselves as being able to make a great deal of difference in what happens to them. I'm sure everyone here knows of either a family friend or somebody that, life events always happen and they just don't necessarily kind of just resign themselves to the consequences, and they feel like no matter what happens, it doesn't make a difference, okay? So when things go well with this group, what will end up happening is the pilots will just kind of attribute it to, hey, I'm lucky. And when things go bad, they say, well, I had good luck the other day, but now I have bad luck, okay? So, or they feel that someone is always out to get them, okay? It's not you, it's me, or in that case, it's the opposite of that. But the pilot will leave the action to others for better or for worse. A big one too is if you ever get into a situation like an emergency, you never want to resign yourself to there's nothing else you can do, there's no more options. There's always something you can do. You don't just want to sit back and let the person who just learned how to fly yesterday maybe take over. You might want to get input, but like I said, this is what we mean by resignation. It's what's the use. Pilots will even go along with unreasonable requests just to kind of be the nice guy. They don't like confrontation as well. So these are things that you want to be able to identify and recognize in yourself and others. And if you can recognize it, that's half the battle. So that way you can basically change those thought processes, if you will. All right. So let's talk about a couple of the FAA test questions here that are associated specifically with these. Remember, there is 5% of your FAA test will be part of those. So let me bring up the first one, which is on anti-authority. What antidotal phrase can help reverse the hazardous attitude of anti-authority? Is it A, rules do not apply in this situation, B, I know what I'm doing, or C, follow the rules? All right, good job, everybody. So correct answer, as shown, 93% of the class, it's follow the rules, right? Those that don't like to follow the rules, just follow the rules. All right, last question. This is actually the last question for this entire course. So 100%, please. This is dealing with another one, which is dealing the antidotal phrase. So what antidotal phrase can help reverse the hazardous attitude of invulnerability? Is it A, it will not happen to me, B, it cannot be that bad, or C, it could happen to me? All right, everybody, I'm gonna go ahead and end it right there. We got 95% of the class with the correct answer. It could happen to me. That's the opposite of it never happens to me. So good job, everybody. All right, let's go ahead and wrap everything up. So as mentioned before, one of the things that we can do is we can create personal minimums. I think these were personal minimums I had way back when, a couple years ago now. I had a little card that I used to carry around, and I just did a quick like Excel sheet. And remember, our legal minimums for takeoff and landings are 3 takeoff and landings within the preceding 90 days. If you did all 3 takeoff and landings on January 1st and 89 days later you went to go fly with your family, you're probably going to be a little rusty, right? This is very much a use it or lose it. So when you create personal minimums, we have some FAA worksheets in the lesson, so you can take a look at those specifically. They'll kind of help you develop them, but I usually added 50% to all my performance charts that we talked about before. My fuel minimums were a little bit higher than the 30 minutes per day, 45 at night. Other things you also want to think about is fitness of flight. So if you're sick or tired or anything along those lines, making sure that you are fit to fly. You don't really want to exceed your comfort zone based on any type of operation, currency, proficiency, weather. And really treat each flight as if it's your first solo and apply that level of thought and concentration where applicable, okay? So you'll get better and better at this, and these are just like things, everybody will have kind of unique personal minimums. These are things that will evolve over time, so as you become a more proficient pilot, these will start to increase, but these are basically where we draw the line in the sand, saying that if the weather conditions or whatever the conditions are, I'm not going to fly unless they are meeting my own personal minimums, okay? These are not required, but they are absolutely good to have. And when we look at developing personal minimums, this is pulled directly from the FAA sheet. This is how they look at it. So you need to review your weather minimums, give current, so look at the weather forecast. You can kind of figure out your cloud clearance requirements. Do you want to maybe have better than what they have? In addition to that, assess your experience and comfort level. And like I said, this will change every month. So you can start increasing these as you're more comfortable. Consider other conditions besides the weather, so environmental factors, temperatures such as density, altitude, short runways. Assemble all the information, evaluate it, adjust it for any specific conditions. We'll talk about the PAVE checklist a little bit more, and then the biggest one is stick to the plan, okay? Stick to the plan at the end of the day. The next one we're going to talk about is known as CRM. This is Crew Resource Management. Usually when we talk about CRM, we're thinking about these guys up here in this cockpit. And this is really the process of coordinated action among flight and ground crew members enabling effective interaction while performing flight and ground tasks. So most of us are going to be flying single pilot. We'll talk about single pilot resource management in the next slide. But to basically act or operate efficiently, you know, you need to, at least if you're flying around with other people, you need to basically use CRM. Even if you have a passenger with you, you know, you can be extremely busy in the cockpit, but if you have a passenger with you that knows nothing about flying, they can be another set of eyes and ears for maybe traffic. They can also, you know, they can also hold something. If you need them to hold a chart, a book, you know, write something down, they can do that. That's all CRM, right? Using the resources inside and outside the cockpit to get the job done. What we'll do is I will share a busy gym video with you guys on Sunday of what bad CRM looks like. That's normally what I do at this point, but I want to move on to get to the single pilot resource management. That busy gym video, if you guys want to find it, it's the Continental 737 training video. And it basically goes through what bad CRM looks like in the event of an emergency. It's a very old 1970s, 1980s training video, but it's kind of drives the point home. For our purposes, though, like I said, 99% of us are going to be flying by ourselves for the most part. So this is what we call SRM, which is single pilot resource management. And once again, these are just the art and science of managing all of our resources, both on board the aircraft and from outside sources available to us as the single pilot, both during and also basically before and during the flight. And the whole goal here is to do this safely, okay? The SRM training really helps maintain situational awareness, and it also works on automation. If your cockpit is advanced, then that's really what you want to do. And what it is it's basically a constant process of basically gathering information, analyzing it in real time, and making a decision. And you're almost constantly doing this. You know, when you drive a car, you're always doing this, watching for traffic, stopping at stoplights, making a decision if you want to, you know, move over a lane or whatever it is. And we're doing this in flight basically every single second. It's just a repeated cycle where we gather information, we analyze it, and we make a decision. Although you are coordinating the flight by yourself, you are not alone though, right? Remember that you have resources such as nowadays we have a lot of technology on board, right? We have GPSs, we have autopilots. If you have ForeFlight or Garmin pilots, those are resources. You also have air traffic control. Okay, so these are all things that are replicating the most basic principles of what we call CRM, or the crew resource management. At the end of the day, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to aeronautical decision making. And you know, you need to, you know, evaluate the situation and analyze analyze the actual events based on your own experience level, the personal minimums that you develop, your current physical and mental state, and then basically move forward with your own decision from that point, okay? There's no one rule that fits all, especially in aviation, so keep that in mind. All right, everybody, so that basically wraps up everything for the course. The last thing I'll talk about just briefly here is what you can expect next. So at the conclusion of this course, what I would recommend is making sure that you can take, obviously, once you get your written done, you know, I would highly encourage you, even though you only need to do it once and pass within 80% or higher, try to take that FAA written practice exam at least twice and get an 80% or higher. That's usually the way it works. If you're scoring 90s on your practice exams, most people lose about 5 or 10% on the actual exam. So that's the reason why we bump it up a little bit. So once you take your FAA written test, we told you about that. We call that the FAA knowledge exam. The best thing you can do is obviously find an instructor and pursue your flight training. So remember what we talked about, the 40 hours is the minimum legal requirement, but the nationwide average is in 65. It's really going to be when the instructor feels that you're safe and proficient to fly by yourself is when you're going to get signed off. I've had only a couple students at the 41-hour mark. And I've had students around 60, 70 hours, and I've had students, you know, finish their entire training a bit later than that as well, depending on how they progress. There's 3 different phases of flight training, and the way that I like to break it down is into thirds. So your first phase is your pre-solo phase. This is really where we take you up to altitude, 3,000 or 4,000 feet. It's all about aircraft control, climbs, descents, turns. We're talking about safety. We're talking about emergency procedures, engine fires, engine failures, slow flight. And once we're comfortable with all that, then we take you down to a lower level, and then that's where we work on your landings. I would say most students on average need about 100 landings in order to kind of really understand it. So that's usually what I see, and that's really leading into your solo, okay? Once you get to your solo and you're cut loose by your instructor, the next phase is the cross-country phase. So this is learning to fly 50 nautical miles in a straight line distance or more away from your home airport. This is where we go over navigation, dead reckoning. You're going to have to do a couple of flight plans at this phase. This is also at that point, once you get another certification from your flight instructor, they're going to cut you loose for your solo cross-country flights as well. The final phase is really just sharpening up everything, right? You may have learned how to do different types of maneuvers, steep turn, slow flight, different types of stalls, different type of emergency procedures, and you had it fairly rough. Right. So now what we're doing is we're really sharpening everything up to meet the FAA requirements in terms of tolerance and everything else. And that's what we mean by sharpening up your maneuvers. And that's leading into your actual check ride. The check ride is usually done. Very, very few are done with the FAA safety inspector. Most are done with the DPE or designated pilot examiner. And the way that that works is it's done on a single day, if at all possible. So the oral portion is usually 2 to 5 hours. It's all scenario-based reviews for the private pilot requirements, and then it goes through the practical portion. So that's about an hour to an hour and a half. So you have to get through the oral in order to get to the airplane. Once you're in the airplane, you're going to demonstrate all of those maneuvers, takeoff, landings, diversions, navigation, stalls, steep turns, all of that stuff to the examiner. You only get one shot to show them 2 standards. You don't get multiple attempts. Bazad was asking, what's the difference between a safety inspector and a DPE? A safety inspector is works directly with the FAA. They're an employee of the FAA. And the DPE, designated pilot examiner, is basically a contractor of the FAA. They're going to give you the exact same exam at the end of the day. Okay, so that's what you should expect moving forward. For those of you, that is about it for this class. So if you have any questions, we'll stick around for just a couple more minutes and answer them. As always, I really appreciate everybody here. So thank you so much. It's been a great class, everybody. Good 4 weeks. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as mentioned, we're still around, and hopefully we'll see you in the instrument class or other future courses with us. FAA, exactly, Martin, is absolutely free. The DPEs, at least in LA, it's about $800 a check ride. And that's whether you pass or fail. Okay. So thank you, thank you, thank you, you guys and gals out there. The reason why I like to do this, I love teaching you guys. It's great to see those light bulb moments, and that's really what drives me. And learning about your successes at the end of the day. Let us know how you're doing. If you pass the check ride, let us know. Pass the written test, let us know. That's really what excites me. So keep in mind, that's really what drives myself, and it's great to see the great news as people are moving on. Helicopter stuff, for those that wanted helicopter questions, Rebecca can email them to you. Just email her, rebecca@checkrideprep.com. Thank you, everyone. Christy, just email Rebecca about those helicopter questions. You're welcome. William, thanks again, Rebecca. Take care. Take care. Have a great one. For those that have any other questions, like I said, I'll stick around for a couple more minutes. And thank you again to all of the mods out there as well. And I know that Travis and Crystal and Rebecca and Missy will be on for answering any questions as well. All right. And for those of you, hopefully we'll see you on Sunday. If you have any more questions, we'll go over the PAVE checklist, which is going over the oral, which will be the abbreviated portion. Joel, if you want to sign up for the instrument class, you can do so on our website. Just go to our website, scroll down about an inch below the photo, and then there's actually a listing of all of our courses, and you can sign up that way. Dennis, we'll see you tomorrow. That's awesome. Your granddaughter's doing the high school class tomorrow, the youth education. Thanks again, Travis. Appreciate it. Sunday's Q&A is 3 p.m. Pacific time. 3 p.m. Pacific time. We'll send out an email reminder on Saturday for it. Glad you learned a lot, Britton. It's awesome. Submit for the endorsement after you pass the final exam. What we do is we actually check to make sure the 80% was met. So that's that. Take care, everyone. Scott, if you have diabetes, it's not impossible to get a medical. I don't know too much about it, but people with diabetes fly. So there might be some stipulations there. Thanks again, Andreas. Thanks again, Jeremiah. Would I get a link for the test for the endorsements? Yep, Sunny, it's on there. It's on lesson number 12. Rebecca's email, Richard, is rebecca@checkride-prep.com. Okay. And let's see here. Michael's asking on the passport and the driver's license, your full name is printed out. So if it needs to match whatever is spelled on your license or driver's license, it's going to be verified when you take the test, and it's going to be verified on your Checkride. If it was spelled incorrectly, then that's where we run into problems. Thanks again, Peter. Have a great one, sir. Thank you again. Thank you again. The sport pilots are slightly different questions, John. There's a couple little nuances or differences. Send Rebecca an email. She can send you those differences. Jim, I'll send out the webinar link for Sunday, tomorrow on Saturday. And thank you again, everybody. Congratulations, you made it. Wendy, it's Sunday, 3 p.m. Sunday, 3 p.m. Michael, I will let you know here shortly on the next classes coming up. Michael is also asking about the standard lifetime access. It's still available, the $149 one. The link is, I can put the link up, I think, for you. There is the link for you. You can follow that one that I just posted and then removed. So it's right there. Bradley, send Rebecca an email if you want. It's rebecca@checkride-prep.com, but really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Billy. Have a great one. Bonnie, have a great one. Ukanda, have a great one, sir. How much is the final practical test with the FAA safety inspector? Free. Hard thing is getting them scheduled. A lot of them don't have availability. In addition to that, a lot of them just don't do them anymore. If you want to upgrade your package, the one with the IFR rating, you just email rebecca@checkride-prep.com. The FAA questions are on our site. You go to each lesson. At the very bottom of the lesson, there's a quiz, and those are the FAA questions. Penny, I will let you know what the future schedule will hold for the ground schools. I don't know quite yet, but I should have a schedule here in the very short future. Final test, last day to finish it. If you do not have a lifetime access, is going to be Wednesday, the 21st. We'll send out email reminders to make sure everybody has enough time and everything. You have plenty of more time, 4 or 5 more days here. The final test is loaded. Travis can confirm that there. The link for the endorsement, Bazad, will make sure that goes up, or I'll have Travis confirm it. And Michael, don't worry about the signature. It's just make sure the name matches. It's not really the signature. And let's see here. Adios, everybody. Thanks again, Susan. Really appreciate it. Oh, almost caught up. That's awesome. Thanks again, moderators. Someone's got the Discord link. Thank you. If Sunny, the final test is going to be listed under, I think it's it's the last class, and I believe it says actually final exam. All right, everybody, I will be happy to answer any more questions that you have on Sunday, but thank you so much for your time and energy and effort. It's been a fun 4 weeks with everybody. I actually have to catch a flight back to Los Angeles right now, so I am going to run. I'll leave the chat open and let everybody answer or say their goodbyes, but we'll still be here and we're still around answering all those questions. But everybody take care. We will see everybody later and have a great one. All right.